In this process with the Pastor Search Committee, we prayed for such a long time before we even began to go through the process of looking at resumes.
When we started this process and we got to meet with the staff and they talked about some different things that were important to them, it was interesting because they were some of the same things, many of the same things that were important to us as a search committee.
We prepared as a group, as a committee, before we ever went for weeks and months, as people know, praying that God would open doors and then ultimately would close doors, and He did.
My story is that I grew up in a Christian home. I was literally born on a Sunday and in church the next. I grew up in a Baptist minister of music home, and because of that, I was in church all the time. At the age of 5, I said some kind of prayer with my mother and don't really remember a whole lot about it. And the only thing I really remember is at church, they made fun of me in the baptistry when the way I said I was ready to be baptized. But after that, you know, moved on and continued to grow. And about the age of 13, I came to the realization that I really didn't remember, I didn't understand, didn't know what happened at that age of 5. I know my parents were sincere and helped me, and I'm grateful for that, but I had no recollection. So September 30th, 1984, we were in a different church, don't even remember the name of it, but I can tell you everything about the day. I can almost repeat the sermon to you. And it's the day that God spoke to my heart, and there on the back row, I asked Christ to be my Savior.
Throughout the search process, me personally, every time we look at resumes or look at references people gave us, I would just pray, looking through all this paper, that the guy that God had for us would just jump off the page, that He would just immediately come to my attention. And that's what one of the things we got from Dr. Lee was just glowing and outstanding recommendations, and it was on paper, and he, from the very beginning of the search process, jumped off the page at us.
Our desire has been, as we approached Christ in the process, that He would reveal to us exactly where He wanted us to go. And so we prayed diligently, as many of you have, that we would have great clarity in the process and great unity amongst us. And at every turn, that's what we found.
As we narrowed our search down from 170 candidates, we quickly found ourselves looking at about 10 people all across the United States. And as we did that, we found that God doesn't just always open doors, but oftentimes He closes doors. And in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, He closed all the doors, and the only door that was open and the one that we felt was most important and was God's man was Dr. Richard Lee.
I didn't tell anybody this story that I'm telling you until I was in college. Even went on to finish college, went ministry, and at my first church, I'm having this conversation with somebody and they said, well, when are you going to be baptized? And I realized that was a need for me. Long story short, it was 13 years from the time I accepted Christ to the time I followed Him in obedience and baptism. But since that point, my life, the journey, the growth, the faith has catapulted because I became obedient to what God had called me to do.
The first time that we went to go visit the Lee's house in Sugar Hill, Georgia, we were able to sit down at their table, and there were a lot of questions that we had and that you would want us to ask. And so we just sat there and we just drilled them with questions. We asked them the tough questions, the things that you'd want us to ask. And as we sat there, He, with just grace and with wisdom and with just the Spirit of God, He began to answer those questions for us. And with other candidates, you know, we sat down with a bunch of different folks, and other candidates, other questions still surfaced. We still had kind of things going on, but every time that we talked with Him, the questions became fewer, and He began to speak exactly the way that my heart beats.
We all looked at one another. One night, I remember it just so clearly, and we said, Dr. Lee is our man.
So my story is this: accepted Christ at the age of 13, lived in a little bit of a wilderness until 26, and came to be obedient to Him. And since then, boy, the growth is, now it's not perfect, but the growth is incredible. I look forward to sharing that story more with you as we get better acquainted.
It was a real miracle for us to look afar and find that man way over in Georgia. And there he was. We were so thrilled that God lighted the path opened the doors, closed doors, led us each step of the way. We praise God for his leadership.